I thought I'd address a question that comes up a fair bit from my clients, because they often see me wearing a pair of shoes like this while I'm training them. So these are just a random pair of minimalist shoes. You can see there's almost no support in them at all. They might look like something like a Vibram 5 Fingers. They would be the most popular barefoot, if you like, or minimalist shoe out there. So they often ask me, should I be wearing these shoes? And again, the answer is not very simple. It really depends on what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve. So the answer in a nutshell is it depends. If you're trying to improve your posture, trying to improve your gait, trying to improve the way you move, I would say yes, try and wear these, but be mindful that if you don't have particularly good gait and you wear these while running, for example, that you're going to probably have problems if you wear these while running. Now, me personally, in one of my introductory Healthcasts, I told you about some marathons that I ran before. So I ran a marathon in normal running shoes. Was pretty bad for about 2 months after that, and then I ran a marathon in almost like a really thin-soled kind of sandal, and I basically re-taught myself to run. So at the time, it was kind of a desperation kind of thing. So I was struggling with running with normal shoes, so I thought I'd just try something different, and it worked for a number of years, but then problems started to catch up with me. But the reason why it works is because I went from basically going for like a heel striker, and then when I wore shoes like these, but even more minimal than this, you can't possibly heel strike in such shoes. So I gradually trained myself to strike it around kind of the balls of my feet here, the midfoot area, which is where you should be striking when you're running. Now, I went super slow, so the first session was 2 minutes around the car park, and then next week it was 4 minutes, then it was 8 minutes, and I gradually increased up to training for a marathon, and about 6 to 8 months I actually ran a marathon in really minimalist shoes when I was living in Korea. But I only managed that because I was super slow. There's no way, even if you are a midfoot striker already, and you change to a minimalist pair of shoes from a normal pair of running shoes, like, you can't do the same distances. You probably can't even do half the same distances as you were. You've really got to build it up gradually and get used to the feedback that these give. Now, if you don't go gradually, or you're not really thinking about your posture, you're really not really thinking about your gait, there are some massive problems that can happen if you wear shoes like this. Vibram 5 Fingers actually, I believe, had a lawsuit against them that was upheld because they promoted the shoe as something that could prevent injuries when it actually caused injuries to a lot of people. And that's because they just weren't being in-depth enough with what they were promoting. So they were saying they can avoid injuries, whereas, you know, people put these shoes on, ran the same distances they were, and were getting injuries simply because there's just no support in these shoes at all. It is very much like running barefoot, and you know, you'll feel a sharp stone in something like this, and you know, you've not got any ankle support, you haven't got any cushioning. It's a completely different way of running, and you will run slightly differently because of it. So obviously, kind of the best way to go for pure feedback into how you're running or walking is to go barefoot. But this obviously has big problems in modern day life. It's not always polite to go barefoot. If you're walking around the shops, for example, it's a little bit grimy and dirty. Also, if you're walking on the street, again, you stand the chance of getting a stone stuck in your foot or a piece of glass or anything like that. So that's why you might go to a shoe like this one. But me personally, I'll run in a shoe like this, I'll work out in a shoe like this in the gym, and it just gives enough protection, and obviously it's socially acceptable, and it gives enough feedback as well, so that I'm not, I can actually feel what I'm doing with my feet a little bit more. Now I used to run with these on the trails as well. I used to do a lot of trail running in shoes like this, and I modified things slightly for that, because I found that there really wasn't quite enough support, not so much support, but strength in the sole for trail running on rocks with roots and things like that. So I went to a slightly different shoe. So these are still very minimal, as you can see that the shoe, it does have a fair amount of flex, and there's not much support for the ankle or anything like that. So you have to that at least helps you with some proprioception at the ankle and things like that. It's not held and fixed in place. So again, beware when you're going a little bit more minimal in your shoes, exactly where your strengths and weaknesses are, and go steady. But these offer just a little bit more traction on slippery trails, and a little bit more protection for the sole of the feet. Because I did find that these were a little bit harsh on the soles of the feet when I was running, and I much prefer running in these. I don't have to really worry myself with every single step. Although I'm still looking at where I'm actually stepping each time. This is something that I never did with other shoes, with a more traditional pair of running shoes, because it was just a given that you wouldn't hurt your foot if you stepped on a stone or something like that. Whereas you still can get this with a shoe like this, but it just offers that bit more protection. So that's what I say to people: be very careful when you're changing shoes. I mean, you've got to be pretty accurate, and you've got to be following some of the protocols that I would promote on this channel if you're going to wear these shoes successfully and not hurt yourself. Because the odds are that if your gait is off at all, then this kind of shoe will accentuate the problems that you have, and that can be a bit useful if you know what you're doing. So maybe you sense that you're not running as well as you should do, and you want to get some feedback for what's going wrong. You can run in do a 15-minute run of these, and if you've got any problems in your gait, after a few weeks of doing 10-15 minutes running, it'll show up on one of these. So, and you'll be able to say, maybe you've got a pain on the outside of your ankle, on your instep, or maybe your calves getting too stiff, and you'll have some idea, if you know anything about gait and if you're really researching into it, what you might need to change. So they're great for feedback, not so good if you are just looking to make a change. If you do make the change, they may help for a little while, they may help change your running style a little bit, so you can try it, but my advice would be to be get into it very slowly, and give your body time to adapt, because you will hurt yourself if you do the same distances in a shoe like this. So I hope that's answered a few questions that you might have about what kind of footwear is best to wear. Certainly these give great feedback, and I definitely would wear them if you're really trying to improve the way you move and improve your posture. Just some more basics about gait before you go. So you can learn a lot about wearing a shoe like this, or going barefoot and doing a bit of walking or running. It will make you a lot softer on the ground. For instance, when you walk, you should be hitting your heel slightly to the outside, rolling down, and then finishing there. So if you've got a good wear on your shoe here on the heel, or slightly on the outside, and more towards between the big toe and the next toe, and around about the balls of your feet there, you're probably going about things about the right way. But that's when you walk, so it should be going something like that when you walk. But when you run, you really don't want a heel strike, and you'll see this immediately if you start running without shoes on, even just in your house for a moment. You try and heel strike if you run, there's just no chance it's going to happen. So it has to be a mid-foot strike around about the balls of the feet here, and then again, most of that impact between the big toe and the next toe, just there as you hit the ground. So you hit the ground like kind of like that when you're running, so this part, and when you're walking, it's heel slightly to the outside of the heel, you roll down the arch, and then onto that part of your foot just there. So that's some basics about it. wearing these kind of shoes can really help with that feedback, and can help if you are trying to improve the way you move. But again, be careful about it, and realize that it would be a simple solution to a complex problem. As I'll say ad nauseum in this channel, simple solutions to complex problems don't exist. And if you've got any issues with your gait, by being careful, you might sort things out with a shoe like this for a little while, but then things will begin to catch up with you eventually. Okay, well, that's me signing off on this short little healthcast about footwear. I'll see you next time.